My name is Melissa Tosetti, and I am the founder of The Savvy Life, and this is my colleague and very good friend.
Kevin Gibbons. I'm VP of the Savvy Life.
And cash flow planner.
And a cash flow planner.
Yep, just like me. So what The Savvy Life is, it's the name of our business, but it's also this concept. It's this idea of building a strong financial foundation while you're enjoying the journey. And doing that simply by being very purposeful with how you spend your time and how you spend your money. It's all about being mindful, which is a word that's overused in our society, but it's all about being mindful and picking and choosing what you do, what you want to spend on. So we have a lot to talk about today.
We do. All right, and so some of the things that we're going to talk about are the ways to actually save the money that you save, and we'll explain what we mean by that. That's one of our savvy habits, and it's an important one. We'll talk a little bit more about some cash flow planning. I'll update some news from an article that I wrote a while ago, and I'm forgetting one thing. There were three things we were going to talk about, and I only said
That'll come to us.
It'll come to us. Right.
Once we calm down from the technology, technology snafu. So, by the way, today is April, what is today? It's April 11th. If you have finished your taxes and submitted them, congratulations.
Yes,
if you have not,
busy weekend.
Busy weekend, and also use this stress as a reminder to your future self that you don't want to do this to yourself again next year, and use it versus just like stressing and then finding yourself in the same situation again next year.
Yeah. And while we're not advocates of procrastination, do be aware that you can file for an extension for your taxes, but if you owe money, that money is still due on the 15th. So if you file for an extension and you don't file your taxes until June, and it turns out that you owe money, you're going to pay a late payment penalty. So if you think you owe money, pay now and then figure out how much you actually owe.
That's such a
it's
such a trap.
It's a racket. It's a racket. It's a racket. Yeah. So you can postpone filing your taxes with an extension. You cannot postpone paying your tax bill. The government wants their money one way or the other.
We have a lot of good friends and clients that are like financial advisors and accountants, and we love and adore you all. But oh my gosh, I don't know how you guys do it.
Yeah. We can't get a hold of any of them right now. We're out there trying to contact them and say, hey, do you want to do business with us and you want to do all this stuff? And everybody is saying, talk to me after the 15th.
That's actually very true. It's funny. We've learned from being and working with financial advisors for so many years that the first couple of weeks of April for us is just get other stuff done.
Yeah.
Weeks, because financial advisors and accountants, they are nose to the grindstone, especially because so many of us have a tendency to procrastinate on their taxes. For financial advisors, all their clients are calling them asking for certain information so they can feed that then to their accountants. Yeah. And actually, the little rabbit holes that we go about, this is a perfect opportunity for us to bring up something that we were talking about earlier today, which is this time that we have now, and this typically happens for us around the holiday season too, where our business tends to slow down a bit and we use it as a catch-up time. But we're talking about how the way that we live our lives, it's so fast-paced, and it's really so much, fortunately, unfortunately, about checking things off our list, that it's very easy to go years of just kind of living that idea of checking
kind of a reactionary, of just reacting and handling all the fires that come up every day.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it, that our to-do lists are basically the fires that weren't fires a week ago, but now are fires because you procrastinated in getting them done. And this is human nature. This is something that very few people don't do. I should say most of us do this. My son is actually somebody that I don't know where the DNA came from, but he is not a procrastinator, and I actually try to learn from him. But I was telling Kevin that I really enjoyed this week and have been able to, because we've had this time to work on other things, to be able to think through different aspects of this idea of living a savvy life or of doing business, that in that our normal fast-paced time, which for us will start up again April 22nd, those thoughts wouldn't have been thought, or the ideas wouldn't have come, because it's just all about getting things done. So I think that no matter what your business is, or even just not even business related, whatever your life is, giving yourself those breaks Well, you're still working, right? Because vacation is something different.
Yeah.
These are not vacation thoughts.
Yeah. These are getting away from putting out the fire thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just trying to find time. I'll tell you a story that I told Melissa earlier. I had a business partner that I worked with many years ago, and on his bulletin board he had a disc, and on it was written TUIT. And so, you think about it and say, okay, you get to puns. So it's to it, and it's a round disc, so it's around to it. So whenever somebody would say, I'll do that when I get around to it, he would hand them one of these discs and say, okay, get on it. And the idea is that if you are always putting things off that aren't urgent, I'll get around to it, years can go by and you never get those things done. And that's a little bit of extreme, but still what kind of comes about is what you were talking about, which is it goes on the back burner until it becomes critical, and then suddenly, oh crap, now I need to do it right away. By scheduling these times periodically throughout your life, your business or your personal life, to say, you know what, I'm going to get away from doing the firefighting for a while, hopefully because outside influences affect that. Like us, we can't contact financial advisors and accountants the week before tax season. It's just fruitless. So that gives us an opportunity to handle all those things that we put on the back burner.
We're getting around to it.
We're getting around to it, yeah. And so if you can find some way to schedule that in your life periodically, it will help so that those things that are low priority don't go to become high priority, or just stay low priority for months or years.
One of the reasons why this topic of procrastination is so important to Kevin and I is because it's a huge piece of the work that we do with clients. And again, if you're new to joining us, what we do is we work one-on-one with clients to help them to create spending plans, or you can use the word budget if you like. We prefer to use spending plan. But then we actually teach clients how to put that plan into play, right? If they want to change their spending around groceries or dining out or clothes, it's one thing to put numbers on a piece of paper. It's a whole other thing to figure out, well, how do I make that change? And that's what we do, is we work with clients to do that. But a huge part of the work we do, because we work in human nature, is we work with clients to figure out how do you fight that procrastination. It's a natural thing. And so it's something that is constantly on our mind. Also, we're humans. And we had a great conversation earlier about our own procrastination and how we have come over the majority of it. There's still stuff. I mean,
well, yeah. And procrastinating costs money. I will tell you about a very painful lesson I learned quite a few years ago. I had a fairly nice used car, and I procrastinated on changing the oil. And my wife was dutifully, you need to get the oil changed. When's the last time? Oh, I'll get to it. Well, I didn't realize it, but in addition to being overdue an oil change, the car had a small oil leak. And I waited long enough to where the oil ran out. I seized the engine. I had to replace the engine. So instead of taking an afternoon and spending $35 to have somebody change my oil, I ended up spending close to $1,500 to put a new engine in my car. And it was just because I was procrastinating and I was stupid. And I would never tell a client that they were stupid for doing that, but I was stupid.
I remember when that happened. You were on your way to here.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. And when it happened, I knew exactly what happened. I knew why, and I just kicked myself and said, "This is what I get for procrastinating." So one of the things about this, and we'll get off this subject and get back onto the one on our schedule. One of the things about procrastinating is that it really does cost you money, even if it's not that drastic. Even if it's a case of where, oh, I forgot to go shopping, so I'm going to go buy takeout. That's going to cost more money. Mm-hmm. Oh, I need to go buy a gift for somebody. Crap. In the days before Amazon, I can't afford to wait to look for a good deal and buy something and have it delivered. I need to go to a store and buy it right now. With the beauty of the Amazon Prime, you can still go on the computer and do that, but it's just still planned.
It still costs you.
It still costs you. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I'm curious, when that happened, who kicked you harder, you or your wife, Lita?
My wife was actually very understanding. One of the nice things about my wife is that she will keep after me to do something that needs to get done, and when I fail to do it, she'll usually just look at me and not even say I told you so. She's actually very considerate about those type of mistakes. Yeah. So she doesn't. I beat myself up enough. She doesn't need to.
She's not keeping a secret book talent.
I don't know that.
If not, Lena, that's a great idea.
I do have one other thing with regards, actually two other things with regards to taxes. One humorous and one a little bit more serious. And I'll do the serious one first. A while ago, I talked on Caffeine TV, and I wrote an article about the fact that I was always getting a federal refund and having to pay into state taxes, and came to the realization that, hey, in California, there's actually a separate E4 form for state withholdings versus federal withholdings. Related to that, I just saw an article that the IRS is going to change the federal withholding form this fall for next year's taxes, for next year. They're making it much more complicated to where you're basically going to be filling out a complete tax return in order to estimate how much taxes you're going to need to have withheld for 2020. They want to get to the point where you don't get a refund and you don't owe anything.
Which is nice.
Yeah. But the way they're doing it, it sounds like it's going to make things much more complicated for people to fill out. This is just a heads up that that's going to happen this fall. We'll be talking about it and writing about it later, but that came up in the news. And on a humorous note, if you did complete your taxes and you want to gloat, I strongly recommend that you go onto YouTube, look up Black's Books, which is a British TV show from the early 2000s, maybe.
Yeah. Hilarious, especially if you worked in a bookstore.
The first episode is him struggling to get his taxes done. And the scene where he's doing that and gathering his receipts and preparing his taxes and what he goes to, it's about a 10, 15-minute scene. If you've completed your taxes and you want to gloat, watch that scene. It's really funny. All right, so.
Yeah. And by the way, that entire series is hilarious.
Series. It's a great series.
It's one of our family's favorites.
Yeah, it's a great series.
That being said, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is ways to save the money you save. And what that means is that very often we will go to a store, and let's say you go to a grocery store and you've got your club card, which is, grocery stores across the U.S. have little cards where in exchange for some of your demographic information, they're going to give you a discount on your groceries. By the way, if you have not signed up for it, fake the information. Absolutely worth it. With our club card, my family, we systematically save between 20 and 30% every single time we go to the grocery store. Yeah. That being said, I save the money when I use. So let's say, for example, yesterday I went to the grocery store. I spent $80. I believe I ended up saving, it was close to $15 in that particular experience, getting ready for an event. So I've saved that money in that I have not spent it, right? Mm-hmm. But I haven't saved it. So the idea is that you can take this one step further. So this is one example. Take it one step further and come home and grab that receipt, look down and say, I saved $15, and then move that $15 over to, let's say, your travel savings account. And now you've actually saved the money you've saved. You've taken that next step. The other way around is you haven't spent that money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a difference. My sister was, and still is as far as I know, notorious for doing this. She would go shopping. My sister likes clothes, and she likes nice clothes. So she would go to a high-end store, and she would spend $500 on clothes. And she would come back to her husband and say, but look, honey, it was on sale. I saved $250. Well, no, you didn't. You spent $500. Mm-hmm. Right? So at the very least, if you take that $250 out of your checking account and, as Melissa says, put it in a savings account, now you've saved $250. You have taken your ready, disposable money and put it somewhere where it will do some good in the future. Otherwise, what happens is a lot of times we look at these things and we say, oh, we saved $15, great. And we forget about it and we go buy food, go buy lunch or something, and that saving just evaporates. So this idea of saving the money you save is a really easy way to do this. Melissa has suggested that you do that with club cards. I'll take it one step further, which earlier I was talking about Amazon Prime. Pretty much everything that Amazon sells, they have the list price, and then here's your price. Isn't it so much smarter to buy from Amazon because you can save 10 to 15%? Think what would happen if every time you bought something on Amazon, you took that savings money, transferred it out of your checking account or your spending account, and put it into a savings account. I mean, you would be saving huge amounts of money towards your goal.
What it is it's a trigger for you to actually save a little bit more money. And I know for a lot of people that are like, I'm not going to come home and look at my grocery receipt and move that money. And I understand and I appreciate that on a regular basis. But one of the things you may want to consider doing is actually using it as a bit of a game as you're getting ready to, let's say, go on a trip. So this is something that I actually did with my friend Carla. Gosh, this was almost a decade ago because I wrote about it in our book, Living the Savvy Life. And it was her idea. This whole idea came from her. I wish I could say that I did it. But she challenged us that for 3 months we would do this process, save the money we saved. And I was getting ready to go on a trip. And so all that extra money I ended up shoveling into a travel savings account. And over the course of 3 months, I ended up saving an additional $300.
It can add up a lot.
It can add up. So what I do now, I don't do this on a daily basis with my savings, but I do it when I'm getting ready to go on a trip about a month out from a big trip. I'll do this. And part of the reason is because I want to save more money for the trip. The other part of it is creates a level of anticipation, which is just ridiculously fun. It's a big part of living the savvy life is using that anticipation to enjoy a trip so much more. And this allows you to do that, and you win money. We don't win money. You
can think of winning money.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's a game, and you win money. There you go.
And I think that one of the key things, and this is something that we stress in a lot of different areas, is you should be saving for things. You should not be saving for a rainy day. You should not have, this is my savings account, I'm just putting money there because it's a financially responsible thing to do. Yes, it's a financially responsible thing to do, but it's a lot easier and a lot more fun to do what Melissa says, where I'm going to take that money and this savings is going towards getting something I want. All right, it's going towards our travel account. We have people we have friends that do a lot of like historical reenactment, and I know several people who are saving to buy full suits of armor. So every time they save, that's that much more money for that specific goal. I'm putting this money aside for my toy. I'm putting this money aside for something like that. And then now, if that's the case, if it's for a specific purpose, maybe you're a little more inclined to do it when you come home from shopping. Yeah. Because there's a reason for it.
Exactly. Yeah. So this isn't aside from your emergency fund.
Yeah.
This also, just to add to what you're saying, it's the idea that every dollar has a purpose. If you take 10 steps back, and it can be a bit of a depressing thought, but if you think about how hard you have to work to earn every dollar, then it's this idea of being more mindful again, of making sure that every dollar goes where you want it to go, and not from a scarcity perspective, but from a purposefulness perspective. And that gives you the ability to catapult you towards those long-term and short-term financial goals. So there's one other trick for saving the money you save, and this goes back to every dollar having a purpose. When we're working with clients, and especially clients that might be living a little bit closer to the edge, they are obviously tracking their spending, and they're through that process of tracking their spending, through that process of us working with them, they're becoming more and more mindful. And we find that a lot of times their savings becomes organic, in that just by the nature of paying closer attention, they are saving much more dramatically than even we anticipated. So we're really good. But that being said, in an ideal world, they get through a month, they've paid all their bills, they've paid all their expenses, and there's still money left over in their checking account. So as their next paycheck comes in, what we suggest to them is to actually take what was left from that previous pay period and allocate it to one of their savings goals.
Sweep it.
They can increase their emergency fund, they can put it towards whatever that goal is, they can split that up. I'm a huge fan of using formulas. Maybe 50% goes to their emergency fund and 50% goes to travel, whatever that is. But it's that idea of, look, you did right by your money, and you get to use that savings to do the things you want to do to further your goals, even more so than the work that we had done with them. And that purposefulness is just awesome. There's not a word that I can better describe it than awesome. And by the way, we call that capturing your leftovers.
And I think that is, what this really comes down to is money. has a tendency to evaporate if left alone. All right. And so what we're always working with clients is how to reduce / prevent that evaporation. If you have $10 sitting in your wallet, by the end of 3 or 4 days, you're going to look down there and you're going to see that you have $3 in your wallet. You're going to wonder, where the hell did the other $7 go? And most of us are going to go, oh, well, I probably bought a coffee or I probably bought a candy bar on the way home or something, and not really know. Some of us, like this person, keep really good record and knows exactly how much money where every dollar in her wallet goes. But the fact is, it's very easy if you're not being conscientious about it for money that's just lying around to evaporate. So that goes back to the whole idea. If you have leftovers after your pay period, sweep that so it doesn't evaporate. If you've saved money through transactions in various ways, move that money so it doesn't evaporate. That's what we're really looking at here. Is how do we control and prevent that type of evaporation? And the way that you do that is by making sure that every dollar has a purpose. Save the money you save.
So 2 thoughts real quick on that. I want to make sure I get to both of them. One is, I was working with a client that reconnected with me after a couple of years, and she just needed a couple ideas for, our finances evolve, and her finances evolved, and so we just did a couple little problem-solving things. But she started laughing, and she said, it's just like you said, if money is just left in that checking account, the gnomes get it.
Yeah.
And I've said that in presentations for, huge presentations to financial advisors' clients, that money left over, these little gnomes get in your checking account will eat that up. And financial advisors have raised their hands and agreed with me that that's exactly what ends up happening, the bank gnomes. So move that money. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, you had talked about, you made the comment that I know exactly where all my money goes. Yes, but I want to be very careful in that statement, and that is not a normal. That is now, because
you learn.
I have to be very careful. If I do not track my spending, it's too easy for me to. I use this reference all the time to see that dog food's on sale, so I'm going to get 2 packages of it. It's going to inflate this week's groceries. In the long run, it's going to save me money. It's going to influence this week's groceries. Then I would be a little bit short the following week, and that's kind of a small scale example of it. But I have to do that, because otherwise, I don't want people walking around thinking that I have all this in my head. Nope, it just bleeds.
Yeah, it's way too. We've talked about this. Personal finance now is so complicated, very few people can keep it in their heads. Yeah. And so you have to do this.
Yeah. I say all the time, my BS life, my before savvy life versus versus now. So yeah. So this is a little bit off topic, but it is somewhat related. Is one of the things that we're really striving for when we work with clients is to avoid the surprise. I mean, everybody has been through the experience of getting close to the end of the month, and it's 4 or 5 days before your next payday, and you look at your bank statement or you go online. It's like, oh Jesus, I only have $20 left in my balance. What happened there? I thought I had a couple hundred. And then you stop and think, oh yeah, that's right. I did this. This little thing and this little thing, yeah.
You shouldn't have to live that way. And if you just get a little bit organized, you can avoid that. And so that's really all the things that we're striving around to address is, save the money you save, know where you stand financially so that you don't get those surprises.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how much money you make. It absolutely does not matter how much money you make.
The numbers, the decimal point just moves.
The decimal point moves, and I think also it can be much more catastrophic the more money you make if you are not paying attention. Because the decimal point moves, right? And that much more is owed. So it's, I very often will hear people say, well, I just need to make more money. And that just hurts my heart, because but you still won't have the money skills so that you're using that money to the way that you want it to. Meaning that you're not being purposeful with it. It's just too easy to get distracted. There is a billion dollar industry that tries to distract us from our spending.
Now, again, we've talked about this before, and we'll go back. We are not Pollyannas saying if you make $10,000 a year, all you have to do is be smart with your money, and you can live a happy, successful life. We understand that in some cases the answer is, I need to make more money.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But
thank you for that.
We're realistic about that.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is somebody who, if they look at the amount of money they're making and look at the lifestyle that they want to live, it's like, man, I really should be able to do this. I'm making good money. I should, maybe a little bit more would help, but is there something else going on? So we want to just make sure that we're not, there are some people out there who maintain that, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do all this. And it's really interesting. I heard a comment on that is, have you ever tried to pull yourself up by your shoes? It's an impossible task, so that's a meaningless statement. We understand the difficulty of people who aren't making enough money, and that is one issue. But there's also the fact of, look at how you're treating your money, how you're spending it, saving it, allocating it, and that can go a long way, even in those cases. And in a lot of cases where you are making what you think should be enough money, it's just a matter of understanding how to allocate it and be purposeful with it.
But I wanted to give a homework assignment. If this is something that you find interesting, I think the best way to start would be to try capturing your leftovers at the end of each pay period. There can be some challenges in that perhaps you and a spouse or partner have different pay periods when that time hits, right? And then it's just a little bit of figuring out when you want to officially quote unquote close out your month, right? The other challenge can be in those of you that use your credit cards for much of your spending. So then you need to understand that you're going to capture your leftovers after that credit card statement has been paid. So and this is one of the reasons why we always joke, there is not an app for what we do.
It all has to be done individually.
Yeah, everybody's financial situation is different. There's gray areas. There's a lot of problem solving, but it's absolutely worth it. Yeah. So give that a try. Try capturing your leftovers, and I would love to hear what you think about that process and how that ends up working for you.
Yeah. And if you have any ways that you have been saving the money you save, let us know. We've done some pretty basic things that we think work, but we're always interested in hearing other ideas. So please tell us.
Huge part of why we're experts is because we've worked with so many clients over the years and have gained ideas from them. Some of my best.
We plagiarize from everybody.
Yes,
with credit.
Yes, with credit, most definitely. But many of the people that we work with have tremendous spending habits. They just have come to us because they've needed help in organizing them, organizing their stuff. But it's good stuff. So we're supposed to talk about other stuff today.
Well, one of the other things we're talking about was to give you some more, was continuing our discussion on spending plans and things that we can build on from what we talked about last week. And last week we just talked kind of about the fundamentals of tracking your spending, identifying where you want it to go, doing that, looking at both your monthly fixed expenses and your irregular intermittent expenses. In fact, I wrote an article last week about intermittent expenses. It's on thesavvylife.com in the articles section. I recommend you read it. I like writing.
It was really good. It was a really, really good piece. Very helpful.
So where do we want to go with spending plans today?
Yeah, I think with spending plans is, first of all, sitting down and doing it, right? Again, we talk about procrastination. What we find is our phone rings and our email gets loaded up 2 times of the year more than any other time of the year. The first week of January, first couple weeks of January.
New Year's resolutions.
And tax time around this time. And we've been seeing that as people have been working with their advisors, working with their accountants. So there's a trigger there. But if you want your financial life to look different, don't wait for one of those triggers. Just sit down. This is a huge thing that we talk about all the time. Actually set time on your calendar to make this happen, because otherwise it's going to be tax time next year, it's going to be January, whatever, and you're going to be frustrated that you didn't do it. So I'd say that's the first thing, and to sit down and take a look at that. And one of the things we have offered is we would be happy to share our Excel document, our template that we use. So if any of you would like a copy of that and just use what we use,
send us an email.
Melissa@thesavvylife.com, Kevin@thesavvylife.com. All our information's on the website. But shoot us an email and we'll send that over to you. And that's where to get started. So give yourself the time to do it. And then also give yourself a deadline for when to finish it by, because it's very likely you're going to get in there, and the monthly stuff will be very easy for you to fill out. I find in working with clients that, because it's in a couple different sections, when we get to the intermittent lifestyle expenses, so the fun stuff, but that happens kind of throughout the year, that's really where the planning happens, because everything else has kind of been set up. And that's when it's going to take you just a little bit more time to think through what you want that to look like. But give yourself that time to do it, get it done. And then I think the other aspect of that is, how do you implement that? Mm-hmm. Right? So the next step of okay, so I actually wrote an article the previous week that your spending plan is like your map. Here's where you want your money to go throughout the year. But that's a document that for many people, without that next step, it's going to be lost in your computer.
Yeah. It's just a static, dying document. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And when in actuality, that is a living document that is going to ebb and flow as your income and expenses ebb and flow over the time. But what you need to do that next step is to actually create some form of tracking. And as you're doing that, you are making sure that when you set up that tracking system, and we can talk about that more in just a moment, that you're setting up the categories that you want to track mirror that categories on that spending plan. So you are comparing one to the other. So here's your map, which is your spending plan. That tracking system is your compass, and it's going to give you the information you need to know, are you on track or are you off track?
So if you're using a commercial money tracking software like mint.com, you need a budget, or any of these other ones, it's really important that you set up those. You don't necessarily want to use the default categories. That's a good place to start, but you want, like what Melissa is saying, is tailor those categories to match how you've set up your spending plan / budget, so that you can do a one-to-one comparison. You don't want to have to be spending extra brain power trying to figure out, okay, in the tracking software it says this category, that maps over to these 3 categories in my spending plan. That's too much work. Make them match so it's very clear where your money is going from, and is it going to where you want it to go. So,
case in point, one of our favorite categories is the beer and wine category. Mm-hmm. We work with clients all over that actually have to go to liquor stores to buy their cocktail items, because grocery stores in those states don't sell those items. Yeah. So we have that as a category. You want to make sure that you've got that beer and wine category in your tracking system, just to give you an example of that kind of level of detail. And actually, I think this is a good time to talk a little bit about tracking.
Okay.
And I think this is really where people start to act like cats, that they don't want the bath. And I understand and I appreciate it, because it is like counting calories. It creates an awareness very often that is uncomfortable. It takes time. We work with clients to make it as simple a process as possible, but we definitely understand the resistance. We would not gently nudge it as much as we do if we did not think that it was worth the time.
I think one important thing to consider is, depending on where you are with your spending and your financial situation, is to follow the 80-20 rule. You don't necessarily need to track every single expense that you make. If you capture the 80% of the money, the big items, and only track those, the ones that you're really concerned about, that's a really good place to start. When you get used to the system and you get really good, and you're at the point where, man, I think I know where everything's going, except I have a couple of items left, then you can add those in. But just pay attention to your big ticket items to start with. If you can get those things going down, it makes the process simpler, and it starts building your good habits, and you're not caught trying to chase every little dollar and trying to go, man, I'm off by 5 cents, how am I going to rationalize that? Don't worry about that. Yeah. To start with, get things set to where you're capturing the big items and you know where that money is going.
It's funny, as you're saying that, I've got in mind a particular client that we've gone in and actually pulled the information from their bank statements and their credit cards, and it's pretty vast. There's a lot going on with the family. There are more simple scenarios that you might have, and then there are more complicated scenarios that you might have. I think that is excellent information or excellent advice for somebody that has got not too many categories going off in any direction. And that's the exact advice that I would give for anybody who's trying to start this. Yeah. So we have clients that are tech phobic and or they just don't, they spend all day on the computer. The last thing they want to do is get back on the computer on a Saturday morning, and they actually use a notebook. One of the pieces of advice that I always give is go out and invest in, this is not what I would suggest, but go out and invest in something really nice. This is really a bad example. It was just on my desk. but something that you would be very excited about writing in. And use that, because there's something about, again, that idea, if it's visually pleasing, if it's something that you would enjoy writing in versus, I'm just going to,
I'm going to scribble it loose on a loose piece of paper that's going to get lost.
Yeah, again, working in human nature, right? Yeah. And then just deciding, look, this is in the month of April, these are the categories I'm going to track. And just to give you an example, the ones we typically suggest clients who are trying to go through this process track is groceries, because that changes every week. Dining out, because that's one that most people want to shift. It is entertainment, and it is clothes. And gift giving. We've got a lot of clients that are big gift givers, and they're trying to just, again, be more purposeful.
So notice that that Melissa did not talk about paying the rent, buying gas, paying utilities. Those are usually fixed expenses. And so you want to make sure you include those when you're developing your spending plan, but you don't really need to track those because they shouldn't be changing very much.
Yeah.
And so don't waste your time on that to get started with.
Exactly.
Now, if you're a detail-oriented person who really gets excited about all the numbers, and we've had some clients like that, then track everything so you can balance everything and have everything.
And more power to you.
More power to you. It's great. But what we're really focusing on are the areas that are likely to be volatile and that you can actually make a change in. You really can't change your rent/mortgage very much. You can refinance your house. You can move to a different place. But those are big changes. It's a lot easier to say, wow, I spent $700 on groceries last week. What did I do there? If I make a couple of more purposeful decisions, I can knock that down to $500. And so if that's something you can actually change, you can always choose how much you're going to eat out, where you're going to eat out, how much you're going to pay there. So tracking the things that are sources of variability and that you can have an immediate effect on are the best ones to start with.
There's something that you said that triggered a thought that I think is worth bringing up. One of the types of clients that we very often get, and I don't think I've ever thought about this before, I think there's an article here, it's a client that all of a sudden over the course of maybe a 6-month period, life changed for them. Maybe they bought the house and there are expenses associated with a house that they're not familiar with. We've had clients that they've ended up having their kids go into private school, and then they bought the house, and then they had to get a car payment. And so all of a sudden, it goes back to on the small scale of, I bought this, this, and this, and all of a sudden I realized that I overspent by $10. Well, this is on a much grander scale. Yeah. It's challenging when you're in the muck, or we call it a lot of times, you're in the trenches and you can't necessarily see, I made this decision, and this decision, because you're making those individually. And it's very easy to not see when you're in the trenches that they're all connected, and that is going to be a bigger financial life. And if the income isn't there, now you're in trouble. Yeah. And that's a lot of the clients that advisors end up sending us, or as consumers, it's when you all of a sudden you wake up that day and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah, I'm making really good money. How come suddenly I can't pay my bills? Well, it's because you bought a new car. You decided that you were going to send your kids to private school for whatever reason. You decided now was the time to do the home remodel. And any one of those things are no big deal. You can cover those because you're making good money. But all three of those, suddenly, that can be an extra $30,000 to $50,000 a year in expenses, and even if you're making good money, that's a huge amount of expense increase to deal with.
And keep in mind, our clients are smart people. It's the way life is, and it's the way life happens. And it always just breaks my heart when they realize that, and then it's this stress and it's scramble, and we help untangle all of that and help them figure out to get through those through those initial lean years or whatever whatever that might look like, or help them to understand, well, you know what, because we're not in the trenches, we're up here in the medevac.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Like a medevac. Yeah, we can see that. And for the clients who aren't as wealthy, it can still be something as simple as, crap, I forgot to change oil in my car and I've got to pay for a new engine. All right, well, that's $1,500 I have to come up with. For, a lot of people, that is a huge amount of money to come up with, and I'm going to put that on my credit card. Okay, now we need to figure out how to pay that off or something. So it's all a matter of scale. And the nice thing about what we do is that it covers huge range of scale. We have clients who make less than $50,000 a year. We have clients who make several $1 million a year. And these basic tenets work for that whole breadth of incomes and households.
But you have to pay attention. You have to have a plan. Otherwise, I always liken it to being a pinball where you're just getting bounced from one expense to the next. Some of those expenses are fun, some of it's spending, but some of it is, the lights are going off and there's sounds and it's awful. So it's being purposeful. I think that we could just stop anything that we do, stop our teaching, stop our working one-on-one with clients, and just say, live a purposeful life. Yep. And that's it. The end.
And we can go retire.
Okay, on the zero money that we would make from that business model. But we do it purposefully.
There you go. Talking about some of the details of setting up a spending plan, there are two things that are kind of in conflict, but you have to figure out how to balance them. One is you really need to make your plan estimates based on data, not just feelings and ideas. How much do I spend on clothes in a month? Oh, I think I spend $300 a month. Well, it will definitely behoove you to go back and look at your receipts and see, like, over the past 6 months, oh crap, you know what? I've really been spending $800 a month. I should pay more attention. Base that as much as you can on real data. Go back and look at your past financial records for the past 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. No reason really to go back more than 1 year. So having said that, the counter to that is don't get obsessed in the weeds and looking for receipts from 8 months ago if you can't find that information. Make your best guess, take action, move on, get your spending plan set up, start living it, make adjustments as you need to go. If you spend all your time researching, that's lost opportunity for changing your habits. So you need to find a balance between getting the real data and moving forward. All right, we need to move forward. And we've had clients who just keep wanting to send us more data and analyze more data, and we really want to know how much we spent. Okay, that's great, but every time we do this, we're putting off implementing the plan. You have to balance that.
It is a little bit of a form of procrastination.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, and I'm going to call you out. It's funny that you say that because you are like a scientific engineer type that likes to know all the data, and yet through working with clients, you really have come to understand and appreciate that at some point you have to take with the information that you have and you have to move forward, because we find that it is the engineers and the scientific minded people that struggle with this piece.
Well, I'm also a scientific guy who has definitive funding and grants, and if I spend all my money researching, collecting the data, I never get to actually move forward and do with what I'm going to do. And so, it comes down to the fact that, again, for the scientists, if I have 1 year and X amount of dollars to do this project, I'm going to spend this amount of time and this much money doing the data collection. I need to have money to do the experiments. I need to have money to analyze results. I need to have money and time to publish the paper and present the paper. And if I run out of money at the end and I can't publish the paper, all that earlier stuff is just wasted.
Yeah.
So you're right about that. Engineers and scientists do want to get all the data, but we also learn very quickly when we're responsible for the money that you've got to execute on the plan.
And I have learned to, when I start working with a client that is an engineer, to tell them just don't spend more than half an hour filling out the template.
Yeah, because they will.
It's our job to talk you through how to finish fleshing it out. one of the pieces to our work with clients is that once we have that spending plan created, and then we meet with them, have another meeting with them to talk about ideas for how to implement the plan based on their life, right? What life looks like for them. One of the things that we do is we have them take that plan and run with it. So I always liken it to the idea of that plan right now is a thesis, and you have to vet it. You have to give it a try. You have to see if you want to spend a certain amount on groceries every month. Is that really feasible, or did we dial down too much, or did we still overestimate? And because you're having more thought process around it, or being more purposeful, you're actually spending a lot less. And I go back again and again. It is so common for clients, even from our introductory meeting, to start spending differently. Organically, they start saving because they're just thinking about it. Whereas before, you're just in life mode. Yeah. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, we do.
So we have talked about spending plans. We've talked about ways to save the money that you save. One of the things I'd actually like to talk about. So right now it is April. What is it? It's 11th. April 11th.
Yep.
And we have Easter coming up April 21st. And I was doing some grocery shopping last week. Is it the 21st? We're looking at our wall calendar.
Easter Sunday is the 21st.
It's the 21st, yeah. So I was doing my grocery shopping yesterday, and I had to run to the drugstore and remember that it's Easter, and so I got my son's Easter basket and stuff while I was there. And I was just thinking about the retail machine that is the seasonal retail industry, right?
Always need a reason to go buy something.
Yes, very much so. And I walked into the store I went into was Walgreens in San Carlos on El Camino, and the first thing that you see is all the seasonal items. And on one hand, I was grateful that I got a chance to get that taken care of before next week when they start getting lower on items. But as I'm going in, I found myself, even me, kind of getting caught up in, ooh, is this going to be enough in his Easter basket? And because it's like everything's so cute, and it's a fun, for those that celebrate, it's a fun holiday, depending on how you celebrate that holiday. But I think that no matter what the season, it's just so easy to get caught up, and that is the goal, right?
That's what they're trying to do.
Go to a grocery store, in order to buy milk, which most families do on a weekly basis, you have to walk through. The direct path is actually walking through those seasonal items. And they're doing that because it's an interruption. It's not normal. It changes on a fairly regular basis. And so I think it's that mode again of thinking through. And I got my items, and I actually put one particular item back. No, I didn't. I exchanged it. But I was thinking about that as just how easy it is. The other aspect of this, by the way, is it would be easy for me to go back to the store next week and see something else that I may have missed, maybe at a different store, and then go ahead and add to it. And this is something that happens around the holidays all the time.
Yeah.
People will be done with their spending. They'll be done with their gift giving, and they'll go in and see, oh, my daughter would love that. Oh, now I need to get something for my son. And then pretty soon, there's 30 packages underneath the tree. I laugh, but this is something that
happens. It's very easy for that to happen. Yeah. And it's all best intentioned. I mean, who doesn't want to get nice things for the people they love? But if you had an infinite amount of money, go for it. But actually don't, because there's better ways to do it with money. But that's your choice. But you have finite resources, and again, you need to figure out how to use them purposefully.
Yeah, I think that one thing to keep in mind, and this is actually going to sound very jaded, especially coming from me, is that seasonal items is a retail industry. My husband and I joke around. We don't celebrate Valentine's Day. It's just not something that we're interested in. I find it I find it a little frustrating because I think that it just makes some people very uncomfortable. But it is, we have been taught that your spouse doesn't love you if there are not red roses on your, delivered to desk and a big old box of chocolates and everything. And there can be a level of kind of ugliness around some of these seasonal holidays. And so I think it's just one of those times to take 5 steps back and think through what you want your holiday to look like if you celebrate that holiday, versus what I'll name names, what Hallmark thinks that holiday should look like, or Safeway, or Target, or whatever that might be.
Now, if you're romantic and your significant other really enjoy things like Valentine's Day, go for it. We're not saying don't do it. The last thing we want to do is be, I'll switch holiday metaphors and say the last thing we want to do is be Scrooges. But it's the idea that what you're doing is because you think it's important, you think it has value, rather than just riding the crest of the wave of what society is saying. Spend on the things that are important to you.
Yep. Don't let yourself get distracted. Yeah. Be purposeful. Yeah. So that was my experience at Walgreens yesterday, and I got him some cute stuff. By the way, one of the things that I'm actually very happy about, and I love the idea, obviously, of living a savvy life, but a huge part of my, I don't know what the right term is, I guess the personality or the thought process is to be environmentally responsible. I'm not a minimalist per se, but I err on the side of minimalism than I do on consumerism. One of the things that we've done since my son Dante, who's now 12, is we've kept his Easter basket. I think my mom gave him this adorable, beautiful blue Easter basket, really nice one, when he was probably a year or 2 years old. And I've kept it. And I've got the grass from it in there as well. I'm reusing it, especially because the plastic grass is so horrific for the environment. Yeah. But it's just, there's no reason why we need to replace an Easter basket every single year when it's, we've got a nice one. So I just have to remember next week to go pull it out of the attic. So yeah, that's a whole other level of savvy that maybe we could talk about next week, is the idea of things having more than one purpose. Mm-hmm. To give you an example, we have a couple more minutes, so I'll stay on this topic for just a little bit. Alton Brown is one of our favorite celebrity chefs. There is first of all, he's hilarious, he's genius, and he's very, very savvy. And very approachable. Yeah. And one of the things that he despises is single-use items in your kitchen. So there's a picture I have of him in my file of, it's like these forks, he looks like Wolverine. It's these salad forks that you use to toss salads and to serve. Mm-hmm. Or anything that is kitchen gadgety. He just if he can't use it for more than one thing, he has no purpose in the kitchen. Oh, I was thinking on a different tack, but I was thinking single-use things like this. I don't want to name names, but the coffee little containers, which have a lot of things. Yeah, disposable items. Yeah, yes, but what he's specifically talking about are single-purpose tools, and I agree with him. Everything in the kitchen should be as multi-purpose as possible. There really, unless you're doing something incredibly esoteric and it's very important to you and your family, there's no reason to have a specific tool. Okay. Everything is used. Everything can be used for multi-purposes. Next time we're on, we're talking about the disposable industry. We're talking about Keurigs. We're talking about the fashion industry, disposable fashion industry. Oh my gosh! I'm just going to be all fired. Okay, so be prepared for a bit of a rant. Yeah. Yeah. I'll get my soapbox. I'll paint it so it's ready to go. By the way, my mom just texted me. She's watching. Hi, Mom, and she was so happy that we saved Dante's Easter basket. By the way, you don't have to text me personally. You can interact with us on if you log in to Caffeine TV. So if you want to join us or do that next time, you log in. It's free. It's easy. It takes just a moment, and that way you can actually interact with us. You can ask us questions. You can comment, and actually it's a lot of fun for us because we get a chance to hear your thoughts. And as we said earlier, we pilfer ideas from our clients, readers, etc. all the time. Yeah. So, we're getting close to wrapping up. Looking at the calendar again, the next session will be Thursday, April 25th at noon Pacific time. Mm-hmm. And Melissa just talked about what it's going to be on. It's going to be looking at the disposable versus recyclable environment industry. Yeah, I think and how that relates to not just relates to the environment, but how that can ultimately end up saving you money and just time and frustration, you know, etc. I like the idea, if you're game to it, of also talking about summer travel at that time as well.
That's appropriate.
Yeah, it's very appropriate, and we can also talk about it's creeping on the time to start planning Memorial Day weekend travel if you haven't already.
Yeah, if you're anticipating going to high traffic destinations, like in California, everybody wants to go to Yosemite. You missed the boat on that.
I didn't mean to make that face about Yosemite.
But yeah, if you're just doing a little more, a little bit less high popular, high volume type destinations, now is definitely the time to start planning that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So very much looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us. Just as a close, we will have this video uploaded on YouTube very soon. We ask if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like they always say, like and subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. Anybody that you know that you feel would benefit from this information, feel free to pass it on. And then, of course, check out Kevin's fantastic article on the intermittent expenses and how not to get surprised by them anymore. It's a really good read.
So thank you. You can find us thesavvylife.com. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook.
LinkedIn.
And we're on LinkedIn.
Link into us.
Both of us are on LinkedIn, so please take a look at our profiles and ask to be connected.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, everybody. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.